All right, here with us is Danielle Millis, all the way from the UK. And she's here to talk about herself and where she grew up. So why don't you just tell us where you grew up?
Hey everyone. I am living in the UK. I'm living in Sussex and I grew up here in Sussex, so I haven't ventured out far. But yeah, so I sort of I'm a white witch from the UK, and that term often brings up a little bit of fear in people, but hopefully this podcast will change your mind. Well, especially about me anyway, like as being a white witch. But yeah, so I grew up, my mum's side of the family were Romany Gypsy, and my dad's side of the family were like working class farming backgrounds. My granddad came from the Cotswolds. And back then, when he grew up there, it was quite a poor area, whereas now it's like quite affluent and a lot of politicians and things live there. And it's very beautiful. But I sort of grew up with that sort of background. I was quite a feral child, really. Like I would never really wear any clothes. And I'd always just be running around with my dog. Apparently I would come home like 3 hours later for my dinner and eat it freezing cold. Like I was a bit of a Tarzan child. And I grew up like living in a caravan. So I literally lived on the land and basically my grandparents had a horse livery yard on my mum's side, and we lived on a caravan there. And yeah, we had this little dog. It's my favorite dog ever. Yeah, he used to listen to me in the womb, like when my mum was pregnant with me, apparently, and like we had this really strong bond. But yeah, so I was quite a feral sort of nature child, really. And then very suddenly and very tragically, my dad, he passed away when I was 3. Like on Christmas night, it started happening, but on Boxing Day is when he actually died. But yeah, so he had a brain hemorrhage. And so I watched him die basically, and like I was 3 years old, and I really remember that experience, and it was so terrifying. And it was like, my first experience of like life is really cruel, basically. Yeah, from there, basically, I began sort of discovering like spiritual gifts. I think like as a child, you maybe, like your parents are like, daddy's gone to heaven, or my mother, for example, daddy's gone to heaven. And so I had this sort of like conversation that I would have with my dad, right? And I was just sort of doing it, I think, for my own grief and my own, like loss of connection with a very vital figure in my life. But yeah, so when I got to about 7, this is when I can remember it, right? So when I got to about 7, like I was looking in a mirror one day, and my granddad on my dad's side had also died by this point. Yeah, I was looking in a mirror, and like my face disappeared, and this sort of white light came, and there was my dad's face staring at me for what I thought it was my dad, right? Like I couldn't see myself in this mirror in this particular spot where I was standing. Like it was him staring back at me and like blinking. But also my granddad looked very, very similar to my dad when they were that age. And apparently, like when people die, they sort of go back to their like prime age if they come back. So like that's how you'll see them. So I don't really know who it was. And because I was in my granddad's bedroom who was alive, like maybe that was a sign to say that it was my granddad. I've been told that it was my granddad, but there's things that have happened within the family, and like I think that might have been told to me to like keep me safe in a certain thing. Like basically, yeah, I can't really explain that here. It's too much to go into. It's family conflicts. But anyway, I saw a spirit that it could have either been, I thought it was my dad. I do believe that it was my dad. But yeah, I've been told that it was my granddad. But yeah, so I saw that, and like I was absolutely terrified. Like I ran out of that room so fast, and I thought that I'd like seen it, like made it up in my mind, right? Because if you can't explain something, then it's just like, especially as a child, it's like, oh, maybe I've just like, conjured that up in my own mind, and somehow I've seen that. So that was my first sort of experience with spirit. And I think as a child as well, like I would always have like this imaginary sort of friend that I'd play with like a stick, right? Like sort of like a wand, right? And I was an only child. I had loads of cousins, but yeah, I was an only child, so I spent a lot of time on my own. And I sort of would play with this little stick, right? You know, and during this play with this stick, like I would hear like someone speaking to me, sort of like an imaginary friend, right? So I also now think that that might have been me like playing with spirit, because some of it was like really like it didn't sound like it was my own voice, and it was almost like I would be playing games like with somebody else involved. So maybe that's where the witchy thing started, right? My grandma on my dad's side, she was very naturally gifted medium, and she later told me that her great granny was an Irish Celtic witch. So my granny died when she was like 91, and that was 3 years ago now. So her great granny must have been pretty old. So it's like a few hundred years ago. But she was very like naturally gifted medium, and she would just see things like she saw a horse and cart coming down the road at her, like while she was driving, like at full speed, like it was gonna crash into her, and she swerved off the road, and the cart just wasn't there. But it was also like down a certain road, like in Hastings, which is like where the Battle of Hastings took place. And she said that it felt like it was like characters from that, like that's what it felt like, and the speed that they were going at. So yeah, that's one of the stories that she had. And she would also, yeah, like places she worked at, because they used to work on farms, like somebody died, and like they didn't spread the ashes, so like a week later she was baking something in the oven or cooking something for dinner, and then like a knock on the door is from the farmer, and she's like, oh, wait there, and she goes to the door, and then there's no one there, and she's like, oh, like it's because the sun hasn't spread the ashes. And so she got the sun to spread the ashes, and she didn't see him again.
What a story.
You know, and then yeah, so that's pretty much like a bit about my childhood and my background and my lineage. I'm just
So that's where you figured out you were more in tune to the spiritual world, and maybe they're attracted to you in some sense, and the fact that you have a lineage of family members who are into the White Witch. Maybe you can tell us more about the White Witch. I don't really know much about it. I just know that the UK has a long history of witching and Celtic occultic stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was always very interested like in the witchy shows and the magical
Yeah.
shows as a kid, right? And I've
Mhm.
seen posts on Instagram that like all the witches used to watch this, or like That's So Raven. I don't know if you know that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, like things like that. There was a really cool one on like CBBC. It was called The Ghost Hunter. So anyway, I used to watch all of that. Like that's what I loved as a kid. And my granny on my dad's side, like I didn't see her much as a kid. She lived like an hour or so away, and I just didn't get to see her much. And
Mhm.
so on my mum's side, they weren't really very spiritual. Like there was a lot of generational trauma. Like my granddad, he's a Romani gypsy, you know, like there's a lot of toxic masculinity, a lot of bare knuckle boxing, drinking, beating people up, you know, like that was sort of like my mum's side, basically. And they all were pretty traumatized. And that sort of came into my life, right? So yeah, the White Witch thing, when I was sort of like 18, I had another sort of tragic death take place. And this was another spiritual experience, actually. So my one of my really good friends basically died in a car accident. He was driving, he killed somebody else in the car during that accident, and two others survived. But about 2 hours later, so I was 18 at this point, and about 2 hours after he's died, like one of my other friends has called me, and they're at a party, they're really drunk, and they're just like, you know, this person's died. Like there's been a car accident, and this person had like been around my house like a week before and sat on a certain position, like in the living room on the sofa. I had this massive L-shaped sofa, and he sat like towards the balcony. And basically, yeah, so he died and I didn't really believe him. I was at home on my own and I was just like, I couldn't take this information in. And like, he was one of like the most beautiful souls I've ever met. Like, he would just walk into a room and like his energy was so magnetic. You just like wanted to just give him so much love. And like, everyone felt that about him. And so when he died, it was just so awful. Like, he was like one of the best members of our group. And anyway, when he died and when I got that phone call, this green laser beam light, right, is coming into my living room. I was like in this like apartment, like flat style thing, and it was like looking over the woods. There was no houses looking in and like on the balcony. And so like there's this a laser beam light in my house and I'm sitting like, you know, like, so the sofa is like an L shape and then like about like half a meter towards the, like by the end of the sofa is where the balcony is, and then there's like a radiator on the wall and I'm sat on like the other side of the sofa, so it's like 5 meters away. It was a huge sofa. And so I'm like, okay, what's going on, and like what am I seeing? So I stand up and I'm thinking again, like I'm tripping, like I'm just heard this news and now I'm like seeing a green laser beam right in my house. And so I stand up and after like the third time, so it's literally going from the floor to the ceiling, this laser beam, like light doesn't bend, right? So it's straight, right? And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, there's no way this can be happening. Like, no one can be shining this in. So I stand up and basically the laser beam is coming out of the wall underneath the radiator, like right by where he last sat. And I'm again like, what the hell is going on? Like, I've run out of this house and I'm just like, I'm going like to my friends or something. And I just ran. That was sort of like my second, like maybe I had more as a kid, but I blocked it out because I sort of didn't even remember when I saw the guy in the mirror until, well, my dad in the mirror, until I had a tarot reading like when I was like 21. So I didn't really remember it. So I might have had other experiences, but this when I was 18 is like one of the experiences that I really remember, you know, so clearly. And yeah, so it turns out that that is a way that spirit can communicate with you, so they can utilize light really easily. And I've had it happen another time as well, but with a white light. But yeah, in terms of the white witch stuff, I just like after that it like grief again, like I think it just like, you know, my heart was in so much pain, and it was also almost like a very similar loss to my dad because it was like this male that I really loved, you know, like that, like it was a real platonic love. And basically yeah, I just started reading tarot and I started getting into like spirituality, and I kept seeing, I think, yeah, so I kept seeing the number 34 on the clock. It was just everywhere. Like I was seeing it all the time. Every time I looked at my phone, every time I looked, you know, and then I started looking into it and it was all like angel numbers and it had a meaning. Then the numbers started changing and they were like 3-digit numbers, but it was almost like it was trying to get my attention. So I started reading tarot around that time as well. And then I sort of, yeah, I guess I just sort of claimed the term witch, and I'd say white witch because of the fear that it brings up in people. And I think that, you know, with everything that I do in terms of like energy work and stuff now, it's basically, yeah, like it's like witchcraft is like manipulating energy, essentially, is what I think, and like using it to like enhance your life and others' lives and like the planet as a whole. So yeah, that was a very long-winded way to answer your question about witchcraft.
No, that's great, actually. No, there's
Yeah.
especially the green light situation. That I mean, some of it sounds like extraterrestrial to me. I was like, oh shit, what the hell? You're seeing in your house enough to make you run out of your house too.
Yeah, it
To
was
scare
like
you.
6 times that it happened. And as I said, it was like a direct, real, like, if you got a laser pen, like it was
Hmm.
like that, right? So it was like someone was
Weird.
doing it. But yeah, so spirit can apparently, because I went to a mediumship development class like a few years back, and this is where I sort of brought it up. I was like, why would that happen? And they were like, oh, so, they can utilize light really easily. Like it's very difficult for them to come back as like their physical form. And a
Sure.
lot of the time it scares people. So if you've had experiences in the past where it scared you, like they won't do that again because they're not there to like scare you, basically.
Right. Hmm.
But yeah, it is scary. But it was so green, like also like the colors mean something as well. So green is like the heart chakra, and it's like love is what I took from it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've been in a really old pub before as well, where my mum took photos of me, and behind, like the next day, she got the phone up, and behind me was this black figure, like in this all black cloaked, like looking like he's going to a funeral, and
Oh
in the
shit.
doorway, and there was no one in this pub, right? It was just me and my mum. So,
Wow.
and then there was
Huh.
a blue light, like a circle, blue light. And as I was walking, because she took pictures like one after the other, as I was walking, this blue light was aligning with me, like on the wall. Like as I was walking, it was aligning with me, and I had yellow orbs all over my jacket. And she showed me this, I think, when I was about 16 or 17. And I was just like in tears. I was so terrified. I thought like the devil was coming to get
Oh
me because it,
shit.
it looked so scary. But it turned out that actually this pub was like robbed by some sort of smugglers a few hundred years ago. And then
Huh.
they died, like they shot them
Oh,
on their
weird.
way out. And basically,
Ah.
there's been other sightings.
Huh.
And yeah, they sort of wanted the picture and everything.
I had a podcast from a German podcast channel not too long ago, and we talked about witchcraft and witches and the devil. It's interesting where the word witch comes from. Here in Germany, witch we call witches, we call Hexe, Hexe, Hexe.
Mm.
Hexa.
An old word, old German word. Back then they called them Hagazusa,
Oh
and
shit.
or Hag, Hag. Hag means thorny hedge. And
Okay. So
thorny
it's
That's
got that
interesting.
sort of thorny feel to the word, it's already a bit scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're also called witches, women that sit on fences. So
Hmm.
fence sitters. And that
Weird.
meant that witches, they sat on the fence, and one leg was in our reality and the other leg was in
Oh,
another
that kind of makes sense now. Okay, I
another
get you.
realm, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
connection between our reality and another realm. Back then, witches or Hagazuzas or hags were healers. They lived between
Mhm.
two worlds, community and nature. They were also midwives. They studied the effects of healing powers. It was their task to stretch an energetic heck fence around the community and the place of life by means of protective spells, stuff like that. And then the Christians came. And
Yeah.
Christians made of the witches what they are now, what we have in our mind, what witches are. These hunchbacked wives with warts in the face and cap on the shoulder and saying
Snow
bad,
White.
yeah, bad spells and hurting people. Yeah, witches back then were, if you were a witch, you were a woman who knew a lot of about the nature and about healing power of nature. It was a good thing being a witch. But then, like I said, the Christians came and everything went down the drain.
No, I was gonna say, especially here in America too, when the Pilgrims first came, and then the witch hunt started happening. That's horrible. Or throwing people in fires and shit. Nuts. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So back then, the pagans lived with their nature spirits and they lived their nature religions, and everything had a soul and a consciousness. The trees had a soul, and the earth and the sky, and everything was like a living being for them. Like I said, then the Christians came and they said, "No, no, we have a better God.
Mhm.
You better believe in
Yeah.
you better believe in this God now. So, and you better do it now." And then there was this emperor, Karl the Great. We call him here in Germany, Karl the Great. and he killed thousands of pagans one day because they wouldn't let go of their nature spirits and their nature religions.
No, but I think it's always well, not funny, but I don't really know how to describe it, but it's quite contradictory when, say a religion comes and does something in the name of God, which involves killing thousands of people and dictating, what they must believe,
It's true. Yeah.
I
agree with you.
If you was a witch back then, it was a good thing, but Christians made a bad thing out of it. If it was a witch back then and they said you are a witch, there was no way for you to get your ass out of there. So where every time you already was that man or that woman walking. Crazy times. Even children, man, everything. Even man was accused of witchcraft.
The warlocks.
They were wizards.
The warlocks.
Yeah. And children also, they killed everything. And also animals. My first podcast episode I ever recorded a few years back, like 4 years back or so, was about a cow accused of witchcraft, and they hung the cow until she was dead. Yeah.
Oh my god.
How horrible.
Yeah, back then also animals like cows, dogs could be accused of witchcraft, and there was a trial, and there was a judge and a jury, and they said you are accused of witchcraft, and they asked her to speak, but she wouldn't speak and defend herself. And then, the story of the cow. They hung the cow until she was dead.
Wow, I never heard that story. That's some fucked up shit.
Crazy times. Yeah.
There's actually 3 graves of witches at the church up the road from me. I don't know though, I'm just trying to Google it quickly, whether they were like burned or anything, but they're like all laid out together, 3 of them. So it's like, there's the 3 witches that live here. And this friend of mine was like, oh, you would have been burned as a witch if you were there. I'm like, yes, I would have. Like,
oh, no.
But now it's not a law to be, it's not illegal to be a witch.
Yeah.
And I think all this shit with witch hunting and stuff like that, it all started here in Germany, I think. Also here in Germany. It started half an hour away from where I live, in Bamberg, Germany.
Oh, wow.
All this shit started with some dude who said, no, now we have to go after all these witches, kill them. It started here in Bamberg, I think, if I remember right. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you're a white witch. So what's the difference between a white witch and do we say black witch or bad witch?
Black witch.
Yeah, I don't know. I think all I know is, as you've spoke about, right, is sort of the connotations associated with the word witch often bring up this sort of hunchback old hag with warts that's doing terrible magic on people. So the white witch philosophy is just basically that you work for good, and like the pagan philosophy basically, and I think that maybe just a witch is what that's what it means as well. But then there are like other practices where perhaps there's like Satanism and like certain African like voodoo practices that get a bad name, especially in like films and things like that. And so it would be called like black magic basically. And so I never really heard like a black witch sort of, like to describe like a dark witch. Maybe it's a dark witch, I don't know. But yeah, like black magic is how you would sort of describe it. So like maybe it's just, like she's a witch, but she's doing black magic, or like white magic. So that's how I
think black magic is trying to hurt somebody. Basically with the voodoo, and you're just trying to have some ill will towards somebody. But I heard there's some healing voodoo too that's good too. I guess voodoo has its bad and good things too about it.
Oh, voodoo is voodoo. I think voodoo is only bad in
it's only bad
on TV shows. So voodoo is not I think where it come from, voodoo is not a bad thing. Maybe some people use it for bad things, but voodoo is not a bad religion. It's interesting. I had a podcast about voodoo. It's very, very interesting indeed. Another question, Danielle. Have you been, since you're from the UK, have you been to the so-called Cresswell cracks? Have you heard of the Cresswell cracks?
No, where are
No,
they?
you haven't heard. You're a
I mean,
witch.
no,
You
I
should
know.
you should
I'm
go
not
there.
very organized witch or very sort of dedicated. I just sort of am. Do you know? I don't sort of think, oh, what witchy things can I do today? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really like, I don't
Yeah, we
know,
get you.
but
We
maybe
get
I
you. We
should.
get you.
Sometimes I do think that. I think, oh, I'd like to go and visit a witchy sort of place. But please tell me more about this place.
I'm
Dan.
not judging. I'm just telling you that there is such a thing as the Cresswell cracks. Let me tell you about the Cresswell cracks. It's
Yeah.
a cave system in Great Britain, and researchers have recently discovered, I think it was in 2019, the largest collection of apotropaic protective symbols ever found. So that means for quite some time, it was thought that these were Victorian graffitis, the article said. But now it's certain that these are protective symbols, protection from, like, let's say, evil spirits, diseases, crop failures, etc. So these are witch symbols. This is a cave full of hundreds and maybe thousands of symbols like that. Very, very interesting. Interesting place maybe for you to visit someday. The Cresswell cracks.
Yeah, I'm just Googling it actually. It looks amazing. I definitely will go and visit. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been to another cave, but not a witchy cave.
I was gonna say, why don't you tell us about that sighting that you saw of the star that just zigzagged? That satellite definitely did not do that, or could not do that.
Yeah. So the
Yeah, tell us.
flying star
Yeah,
phenomenon,
let's
right?
hear
So
it.
it started about 2 years ago. And basically, so it looks like a star, and then
Mhm.
it will it will be stationary, or like you'll just be looking up at the sky, and they're all stationary, and all of a sudden one of them starts moving, and it's like falling down like really fast, as if it's just free falling, right? And then all of a sudden it will just stop and then go left or up or right, and just continue sort of moving around like that. And at first I was with some people camping, and we were at a lake, and I was just like, wow, what's that? And it was a full moon, so it was really bright. And everyone else was like, yeah, that's a bit weird. Like, they just sort of didn't think anything of it. And then, like, every night that I looked up at the stars, I would see it. And
Wow.
like sometimes, like the weirdest one that I saw was like, it was just moving along sort of like through the middle of the sky. And then all of a well, it was massive, but like, maybe it was like a couple of inches in the sky, like
Sure.
with how I'm looking at it,
Your
but it must
distance.
have been
Yeah.
big, yeah, like from a distance. So it's like moving along, and then all of a sudden this just blue light just flashes, and then it just disappears. Like it's gone.
Huh.
And then other times it will just start moving along, and you'll think, like, is it a satellite? Or because it's just moving, it's not going up and down and round, just moving along. And then like it will hit into a stationary star. This one that's moving stops, and the stationary one starts moving.
Wow.
So I don't know what this is, but I looked it up on YouTube, flying stars, and there's people all over the world that are equally experiencing this, and I would recommend it. Like, if you want to know what I'm talking about, maybe it's quite, it brings an image to the mind, but if you want to like see more clearly what I'm speaking about, then yeah, go to YouTube and type in flying stars. And yeah, there's like a guy in India, he said he's been seeing it for like 9 years or something, and his one is like going up, down, round and round.
Oh, wow.
And there's some people in America, and like theirs just disappear as well. So yeah, but I said earlier, like to you, Dustin, that like one of my scientist friends, he basically said, oh no, it's a satellite. Elon Musk let off loads of them, right? So it must be a satellite. But I'm like, yeah, okay. Sometimes when they're just moving along, like it might be a satellite, but I don't think satellites are designed to sort of go up, down, round and round and just disappear into a cloud of blue smoke, or to hit into stationary stars and then stop moving, and the stationary star stops moving.
Wow. Yeah, that's super interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Man.
I just like, it was throughout the COVID that I saw it the most. And yeah, like I was writing about it on Facebook and everyone's like, are you tripping on LSD or something? I'm like, no, like I don't do that stuff. Like I'm literally like, it's real. Look out your windows, guys. Like the aliens are coming. And now in America, it's a whole thing, isn't it? Where it's like the aliens are real.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're exactly right. No, you should try this at around your place. Is we had a guest on our show that showed us that if you take your camera and put it in slow motion and just point it at the sky for like 30 seconds, you might catch something. And then me and Daniel actually tried it ourselves, and we caught multiple things that are just like zigzagging every which way or just going across super fast. Even when you slow it down even slower than you filmed it, it even just still flies faster. And again,
Wow.
unexplainable. And maybe because maybe you're so in tune with the spirituality and even ETs, because they're, I think they're interested in people who are more inclined into, what's going on. But yes, again, maybe give that a shot and see if you catch something
Yeah.
yourself.
Did you do it on your phone or on like a
I
proper
did.
camera?
Yes, on my phone, just in slow motion mode. Just pointed to this. Apparently, he said a cloudy, patchy days are the best days to do it because they just kind of like to come out of the clouds or zigzag out of the clouds. Uh, I had some footage you can maybe find on my Facebook of stuff that I've taken into the sky where they just come out of nowhere, and then sometimes they'll just be blinking while they're moving around and shit. It's really bizarre stuff. He coined the name the Invisible Highway. That he claims that they're just UFOs just going helter skelter through our skies every damn day. And just if you just point a camera up to the sky, you might eventually just catch something.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I'm surprised I didn't think about that shit a long time ago. Yeah.
Because I think with the iPhone, I can't even get, especially at night, I can't really get much,
Sure,
like
sure.
it
Get
doesn't
the
pick up much.
during the day. Just do it during the day. I bet you might catch
Okay.
something. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, guys, let's wrap it up for today. Maybe, Danielle, would you tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you online, maybe?
Yeah. So my business, basically I've started like just doing mindset coaching, business mentoring, and I teach the 3 levels of Reiki, but I do it very traditionally. My business name is my name. It's very easy to remember. I've recently changed it. I thought, hey, let's just do this. DanielleMillis.com. So www.daniellemillis.com. All my socials are there. My Facebook business page, I think it's Danielle S. Millis actually on that, but if you type in Danielle Millis, you'll be able to find me. And yeah, it's pretty easy, guys, but it would be great to connect with some of you, especially if you're interested in all of these weird and wonderful phenomenons.
Yes.
Yeah, we will put a
awesome.
link in the description so people can find you more easy. And I'd say let me end this episode with a little story about another witch here in Germany, because Germany has a lot of stories about witches, a lot about
Let's hear it.
fairy
Let's hear it.
tales and stuff like that, about witches, legends. And here in Germany, we have a big rock formation, a mountain, you could say, which they call the Sleeping Witch. They say, the legend says that the Sleeping Witch used to be a capable maid, working for this guy, and however, she was no longer young and had already lost many of her teeth. And then the old farmer died, and a new guy came, and he was a hothead, and he cussed at her, and he was swearing all the time, and he wanted her to show who's the boss, and that he's now the master. One day, the new guy, he was so hard on her, she was so tired and exhausted from work, so she laid down and wanted to catch some sleep, and he said, no, you get up and you work and you work. And she said, the only thing she said is, no, kiss my ass, I'm going to sleep. And now they say she's sleeping to this day. She's that mountain, she's the rock formation.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
we have so many stories about witches, just like that here in Germany, so many. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
You're welcome. So please stay with us for 2 more minutes, okay?
Yeah.